Wait, don't go in there. He's doing his podcast.
Oh, bloody hell, does it feel like it's literally been 10,000 years? You guys miss me? I'm guessing no. Well, to the uninitiated, this is the Successfully Failing Podcast. I am Danny. I'm here by myself, home alone, quarantined, doing good. Yeah, man, it's been shit. I think the last episode I've done was in I don't know if it was 2018 or 2017. It might have been 2018, probably when Avengers Endgame came out. Oh no, that's not even Endgame, that was Infinity War. Yeah, shit, it's been a long time. Well, before I get started, let me get this out the way. You guys can follow Successfully Failing on Instagram at This Is Successfully Failing. You can follow myself at I Am Danny Darko on Instagram, Twitter, and Twitch, all the same. Yeah, man. So I'm here by myself. Got bored. I figured I could either play some video games, which I'm super fucking backed up on. Between just got The Last of Us when they came out. Played it a little bit. Dope so far. Still have to beat Death Stranding. Started that up last week or so. I'm digging it. I don't care what anybody says. Pretty interesting game. Weird, but that's cool. Nier Automata. A bunch of other shit I gotta beat. I've been stuck on Red Dead Online and obviously Siege. Actually, no, I don't know if y'all know that I got into Siege like crazy. Yeah, that's been my jam. Between that and just catching up on a lot of movies, I probably watched, I want to say over 100 movies during quarantine. Stuff that I had to catch up on from previous years because I fell off going to the movie theater like every week. Some horror stuff that they had there. Just recently got the Shudder app, which is pretty cool. So yeah, been doing that. Still some stuff I gotta catch up on. I still haven't seen Shazam. What else? There's a couple other jams I haven't seen. Got around seeing Spider-Man Far From Home. Loved it. What else? I don't know. It's been a lot. It's been a lot that I've been backed up on and I've been catching up on. But I don't know. I figured, like I said, I'm home alone. Got nothing to do here. I figured I'd just, I don't know, chat with y'all. Looking in my notes, I found a list of wrestling stuff, which, to no surprise, that's what we've been doing a lot of before we stopped recording. As obviously everybody would know, we're all, or have been in quarantine for a couple months. A lot of things have been stopped or put on hold. Concerts, movie theaters have been closed. Sports, wrestling, with the exception of WWE and AEW, they've probably been the only two big companies to actually continue wrestling, whether it be live in front of no fans or pre-recorded also in front of no fans. But New Japan actually hasn't been wrestling for a couple months, and they just as of last week they recently started wrestling in front of no fans. But that company is probably one of the few companies that you could get away with wrestling in front of no fans, just because the wrestling is so top notch, for lack of better words. You don't need fans. It's one of those things you could literally watch it in mute and you would still get some amazing matches. You still would feel the intensity. To further that, when I first started watching New Japan, when the app and all that stuff became accessible, a lot of the events were not in English. They had just the Japanese commentary, and that was fine with me. I mean, the emotion that these guys put out, you didn't have to understand a word they were saying, and it was great. They had English commentary for select events, not every event, but then eventually it got to the point where pretty much 99.9% of all New Japan events were also available in English commentary, which is cool because then you can actually understand more about who's who and where they come from and all that other stuff. You know, get terminologies, names down, and you become a little more familiar with it. But with the reemergence of New Japan after quarantine, they have English commentary, but it comes at a later date. But like I said before, I'm so cool with watching it in Japanese, that I don't really, that not being in English doesn't bother me. I'll sit down and watch it and still get that same intensity. And so yeah, they just recently started wrestling again. They did started off with the New Japan the New Japan Cup, and pretty much that is a tournament, one and done tournament, and the winner of that gets a shot at the world title, the world heavyweight title. In this case, it's a little interesting because Tetsuya Naito, goddamn English, Tetsuya Naito, actually Tetsuya Naito, there you go, god damn it. Oh, he has won at Wrestle Kingdom. He won both the IWGP Heavyweight Championship and the Intercontinental Championship, being the first ever dual champion. And it's a shame because there was a lot of crazy events over the last year or so, 2 years that we've been gone, and I always wanted to get to it, whether it be not being inspired or just lazy. Both of those combined, considering that these past couple of years have been crazy rough. I'm not going to go too much into that, but it's been a roller coaster ride, more downs than ups, but the ups have been enough to keep me afloat and keep me, still here, keep us all here. And thankfully, ironically enough, with all this going on, things have been like a lot better, and I can't stress enough how grateful I am to be in the situation I am right now. And hopefully it continues this way. Hopefully there's not another down for a long time, and if it is a down, hopefully it's something very, very minor. But again, I don't want to go too much into that. There's been a lot of negative and world-shaking stuff going on, and that's never really been this podcast's outlet, and I know maybe some people might have a problem with that, but this is pretty much normally it's the guys coming together, just chatting it up about things that we would normally chat up about on our own, and we put it out there, like, might as well. And it's fun to get our opinions out there, whether 5 people or 500 people are listening. It's still cool, but it's nice to get back in the swing of things, and maybe this right here will be the start of something more consistent. To those who have listened before, to those who have tuned in, it's much appreciated that you guys always have tuned in and tend to ask every now and then, when are we coming back and all that. So yeah, hopefully this is the start of something more consistent. Like I said, we've been stuck in quarantine, and I probably should have used this time to actually record more, put out more episodes, and there has been enough content going around to warrant more episodes, but it's been a combination of things. But like I said, hopefully this is the start of something more consistent, and something that you guys will all enjoy listening to. So yeah, back to that. Back to the whole wrestling thing. I figured I didn't really know what to talk about. I was taking a shit, and I was trying to figure out, like, what could I talk about if I decide to record today. Especially being that it's by myself. I'm by myself right now, so it's kind of weird. Never really liked just talking. Though I do talk a lot, but never really liked just talking by myself. It always felt weird. Especially like when you go back and play it back, it's just like, I gotta hear my voice. But kind of also too, that's another thing. I stopped going back and recording my own voice. Editing and whatever, because these episodes tend to be so long, and it's like, what's the point of even, I like to be as raw and as authentic as possible. So outside of, like, maybe, major interruptions or something, I just keep going on. outside of like maybe the intro, getting everything going. It tends to be like the hardest part, just getting the words out. But yeah. So, anyways, I had a couple of lists throughout the year. So I think in March or no, not March. It had to be like April or early May, sometime in May. I had put a list on Instagram, something small, pretty much just like letting you guys know like my top wrestling matches of the year, and it was pretty interesting because you had stuff like I think my number one was Will Ospreay versus B Priestley, which is interesting because they're boyfriend and girlfriend, and they actually wrestled a match against each other, and it was just the most interesting thing to me because again, they're boyfriend and girlfriend, and they're essentially beating each other up, and it's just the weirdest but coolest thing in the world. Like, don't get my words twisted. I'm not saying domestic violence and abuse is cool. This is wrestling, and they both love the sport, and they have a passion for it. And I actually dated a girl who was into wrestling as much as I am, even more to the fact that she actually wanted to become a wrestler, and it was just a cool dynamic. And I remember like putting her in a couple moves on the bed, like DDT and all that, and it was fun. And obviously with wrestling, yeah, you're hurting each other, but there's also it's ironic that the whole point of it is to beat each other up but keep each other safe at the same time. So yeah, Will Ospreay and his girlfriend B Priestley had an amazing match. I mean, it told a story. It's like, if more people could do that, like, I think relationships would be so much better. You get out all the frustration and any kind of pent up anger and just take it out in the ring. And again, it's not like you're boxing or you're in an MMA UFC fight where you're trying to actually fucking tear each other up. It's like a dance, and that was cool to me. So that was my number one. I had a couple matches from New Japan. I know I included all four of the sort of mini tournament matches between. It was in no particular order. It was Jay White, Kota Ibushi, Naito, and Okada, and two of them duked it out one night for one championship, and the other two duked it out for the other championship. And then the winner of both those matches went on to the final night of Wrestle Kingdom, and the winner would become dual champion. And it ended up being Okada versus Naito, and Naito won, being the first dual champion. And I included all four matches in that because it was all part of one story, And I forget the other. I deleted the post on Instagram, but I forgot the other matches that I included on there. Yeah, so that's a story for another day. But I guess I have this written down. This is the most recent thing. I never really put it out anywhere. So this is pretty much wrestlers who I'd love to see in the G1 tournament. And to those who don't know what the G1 tournament is, this is another New Japan event, and it's I think it's considered a round robin tournament. I forget the term, but it's I think 20 wrestlers, and they're split up into 20 wrestlers. They're split into two blocks, block A, block B. Every wrestler gets a chance to face each other, and then by the end of the tournament, the two leading wrestlers on each block A, block B, face each other in the finals, which will culminate in them getting a briefcase a contract with a briefcase with a contract in it, which allows them to wrestle for the IWGP Heavyweight Championship at their big event at Wrestle Kingdom. Normally that'll be the main event, and they hold on to that briefcase similar to Money in the Bank in WWE. They hold on to that briefcase throughout the year. They could put it up for grabs if they if the story deems. And but normally that it doesn't really change hands, and it's just in New Japan they don't wrestle every day. They have events every month, with the exception of some tournaments like the Cup and the the G1. They also have the Super Junior tournament, which is essentially the G1 tournament, but for the junior heavyweight division. They have a tag team tournament and etc. So you hold on to that, and then you get to face the champion at Wrestle Kingdom. The interesting thing, though, is that in all of these tournaments, barring injury or whatever, they include the current reigning champion in the tournament. And what that does is it's cool. It actually creates this. First, let me say, if the champion wins the tournament, ends up going to the finals, wins the finals, they choose who they want to face at Wrestle Kingdom. That could be anybody from who they faced before. But what that does too is, if in the event that the champion is pinned or submitted or within the tournament, that opens up a smaller story in which they get to challenge for the championship in any of the coming events before Wrestle Kingdom. And it's cool because what that does is it doesn't oversaturate the person who wins, and it doesn't saturate that feud between them, to the person who wins and the current champion. It's kind of like how WWE, where they'll literally have like Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns fight each other. Well, not Brock Lesnar, because we all know he doesn't appear unless he has to. But they'll have like Roman Reigns and John Cena or Seth Rollins, whoever it is at the moment. They'll have them pretty much fight each other every week, every month, and just drag it out. Whereas to New Japan, it's one of those companies where they do long-term booking, which is great because it doesn't diminish that rivalry in a sense, and it makes for better stories. You don't get tired of it. They're building anticipation, and New Japan, I mean, outside of like their press conferences, there's not really many promos either. It's just pretty much they'll have like press conferences and things like that, little small events where you'll hear the two go at it with each other verbally, and they really like they'll meet each other every now and then in what they call like 6-man tag preview matches, where it's a way to get them two in the ring before a big event, but not in a one-on-one event where one of them loses and you kind of like hurt their credibility by having them pinned before a championship match against the champion or whatever it is. So it's cool how they do that. The G1 tournament is that, like I said, it's a tournament where the winner of that tournament faces the IWGP Heavyweight Champion at Wrestle Kingdom, usually in the main event. And this tournament, it's crazy because in the few years that I've watched it never disappoints. You'll have some matches that are okay, some faulty finishes, some flaky finishes, whatever. But it never really feels like I can never say that I've seen a bad day of G1 matches. Some matches may be okay, some matches may be good, but most of the time it's always the best showing. And it's weird how like you could watch it on the first night and just see like a match of the year candidate or a couple match of the year candidates, and then tell yourself or your friends like, damn, how are they going to top this tomorrow? They're not. And then lo and behold, tomorrow it's like, whoa, what did I see? So it's pretty crazy how that, and it's always high octane, consistent, and it's full of emotion and a lot of I can't think of the word right now. Oh my god, I'm really in retard mode. A lot of suspense, things like that, and it just never disappoints. And this is something that me and the guys always look forward to. And unfortunately, this year I think we're getting the G1, but I to my knowledge, I think they pushed it back towards the end of the year, which is fine because it's actually closer to Wrestle Kingdom, and that's it kind of lessens the wait, because it's one of those things where like it's nice that they do stretch it out, but then it's like, damn, after after G1, I mean, you get a lot of cool events, but you're just waiting for Wrestle Kingdom, so it kind of like fills that void a bit. But it was all in question because we never knew when we were going to get back into the mix of things. We didn't know when certain companies were going to be able to actually go out there and perform and play whatever game it is that they, wrestle, football, basketball, and all that, baseball. We everything's uncertain. So, to my knowledge, they're doing the tournament at the end of the year. I think October, November-ish or something. I think October, but that's still up in the air. But right now, they're doing the New Japan Cup, which is cool because it allows to fill in some missing time with some feuds and, allow some kind of story until then. But yeah, so anyways, wrestlers who I'd love to see in the G1. Now this list is, I kind of, first, obviously, you're going to exclude people who are already in the G1 and who have wrestled in it before, who are currently not necessarily in New Japan, but have access to New Japan. Those who are in New Japan, and obviously those who wrestled before in the tournament itself. Now, my thing was do I include people that are already tied into WWE contracts, which WWE contracts can't do anything else but WWE outside of a very minimal indie stuff, and it's very it's a very thin line of what you can and cannot do. What do you call it? But you have companies like ROH that they're obviously partnered with New Japan. AEW, though, there's kind of a thing going on between the two. But you had instances where Jon Moxley wrestled in the G1 tournament last year. You have Chris Jericho, who seemingly can go wherever, do whatever he wants, which is great because he's obviously the reason why AEW is a thing. But anyway, so that was the hardest decision. Do I choose people who are locked into contracts and whatnot? And then also too, another thing that happened a couple months ago is WWE laid off, let go of a lot of talent, whether it be producers or off-screen people and actual current wrestlers, people like Matt Cardona, aka Zack Ryder, Eric Rowan, people of that stature who, whether they were used a lot or not on TV, their names, them. Kurt Angle was one of those, but though he's made a couple appearances on WWE and NXT, but to my knowledge, it's one of those things where they're just riding out whatever, because when you have I think it's a 90-day or 60-day no performance clause after they let you go. If your contract doesn't run out, if your contract runs out, you can do whatever the hell you want. But if they do fire you or whatever, you have a 30-day thing where you can't perform in other organizations or whatever. So, but they're kind of riding his that period out, including him on there. I hope he leaves because everything in that company is just but that's a story for another day. And I think I'm going to try going forward, because we used to do this a lot. We used to just not rag on WWE, but it was to the point where we sat down and watched the pay-per-views, and we tried to give it a chance, but it was just joke after joke after joke. And I don't mean ha funny joke. I mean just you have all this talent in the world, and you have these screwy finishes and bad matches and dumb promos and meaningless storylines, and Vince changes everything literally minutes before the show starts, but before people go out and wrestle. People will not know an outcome, or they'll think one thing is going to happen, and then halfway through a match they're being told to do something else to the ref. It's crazy. But anyways, back to this list. So again, it's wrestlers who I'd love to see in the G1 tournament, and I started off with Cesaro. Cesaro, I mean, if anybody's ever watched him in WWE, he's an amazing talent. I mean, a pure wrestler. His strength for a guy of his size, who's not even really that big in comparison to others, he has some strength, and he could get it. He could get it down on a technical level, storytelling level. Not a high flyer, but that's fine. Not everybody has to be. Not everybody should be. But yeah, Cesaro is a guy that I mean, not only me, but there's plenty of people out there who want to see more of him, and he's a guy that should be a champion. If you're not going to give him one of the two main titles, the Universal or the WWE title, give him the Intercontinental, man. Let him have a nice run with that. But they treat the Intercontinental title as a joke. And with the Universal and the WWE title, even with a brand split, the Intercontinental title always just feels like a sort of afterthought, even with like the 24/7 championship, which is a joke, and the U.S. championship, which I have no problem with, but it seems that they treat the U.S. championship with more prestige than they do the Intercontinental, and that's bad when you have guys like Chris Jericho, Shawn Michaels, people of that stature holding the belt and adding prestige to it as like a higher tier, mid-level championship for those who are not going to win the WWE championship, if at all, at least not at the time. It's a nice. I don't want to say consolation prize, but it is a very good belt to have if you're not the Hulk Hogan and John Cena of the company, which that company tends to thrive on, and that's fine. Because again, look at Shawn Michaels, look at Chris Jericho. You look at the people who've held it in the time they've held it, and what they've done with it it's been amazing. So yeah, Cesaro is one of those guys that they should let him off the leash. He's got enough power to make up for his lack of size that Vince has a hard on for, but he just doesn't let him go. I mean, let him do his thing, and it's a shame. So I don't know how long he's on the contract for, and I'm assuming it's for a long time, but that's a guy I love to see in the G1 tournament. I mean, night after night of just amazing matches against guys like Ishii and Naito and Okada and Shingo and Ospreay. It would be crazy. I'd love to see him and Zack Sabre Jr. go at it. You got Zack Sabre Jr., who's the technical genius. This guy, his submission game is off the charts. Tried to stop a overall stronger guy that could just break him in half, and but we'll see. I don't know his contract situation. I don't know if he'll ever leave, but shit, if he does leave, that'd be great. Now we got this one. It's pretty interesting because he actually was one of the guys that got let go, Eric Rowan. I don't know his real name. Excuse me for that. But by WWE knowledge or logic, we're gonna call him Eric Rowan. And he's a guy he's a big dude. I had never really seen him before WWE, NXT, whatever, but he's always been a guy that he's big, he's relatively athletic, he can move, and he's always been a guy who is relegated to a joke in the WWE, and that's kind of unfair. We all see what Brody Lee has done in AEW. Right off the bat, he's a contending for their main title. He didn't win, but it's okay. You just showcased what he can do. And Eric Rowan was his counterpart when they were in the Wyatt family and the Bludgeon Brothers, and they both kind of have a similar moveset and ability set. And he's a dude who they did release, and I forgot who it was. Somebody said, I think it was Brody Lee. Somebody said that they see him wrestling in Japan, and that is a breath of fresh air for anybody who's a fan of his or just a fan of wrestling in general. Because one thing the G1 does lack, and this is not like a slight in any way, or I'm not knocking them. They lack big men. I mean, they've got the biggest dude they've got on their list is Bad Luck Fale, and I love him. I give him credit for what he's done with New Japan, Bullet Club, and everything. I know he's an amazing teacher and one of those locker room leaders, but he's limited. He's a little too big for most guys to do anything, with, and that's fine. There's different ways you can tell stories and have matches in wrestling in general. It's not, you don't have to rinse, wash, and repeat the same formula that WWE does with the David versus Goliath, or big man versus big man, or face versus heel. New Japan's very open, heel versus heel, face versus face. It's just wrestling, and they tell stories within that. And for two reasons why I'd like to see Eric Rowan, well, not two of the many reasons why I'd like to see Eric Rowan in the G1 tournament is because the lack of the big men that they have to not only wrestle in general, but to wrestle Bad Luck. So I think him and Bad Luck Fale, if they should ever wrestle in the G1 together and are in the same block, it would be nice to see those two titans clash, and I think Japan would love that. To have two kaiju type wrestlers, going at it. They love their kaijus, they love their mechs, and it would be cool to see those two go at it. And then Eric Rowan has enough agility and ability to move around with the other guys. So not only does he add another he levels the playing field between Bad Luck and everybody else, but everybody else can move around with him. Like, imagine him again and Zack Sabre Jr., this skinny submission technician trying to take down a beast like that who can move, So Eric Rowan would be great. Now this one, Lord knows this guy's not going anywhere, but he's been one of my favorites, and I kind of fell off with wrestling, got back into it around the era where he was on top along with other guys, and this is Sheamus. Now, Sheamus is a guy that, he gets a lot of flack for some stuff in WWE, but that to me is more the booking nature of it, not necessarily a slight on him. But Sheamus, this guy he's powerful, he can move. I mean, he's limited to a move set, but that's not his fault. That's clearly the WWE. I mean, you put him in the ring with guys like, I would love to see him and Ishii go at it, man. Ishii and Zack Sabre Jr. are two of the guys in New Japan that they're not Okada, Naito. They're not at that level of going for the main title, but they're workhorses, and every night, they may not be the top guys on your list at first, but then the more you watch New Japan, the more you fall in love with these guys, and you see the amount of hard work they put into it, and like somebody like Ishii who hits hard. So you put him in the ring with Sheamus. I put anybody in the ring with Sheamus, but Sheamus is a guy I would love to see him over there. I mean, he's another monster. He's not big like Eric Rowan and Bad Luck Fale, but he's a monster in his own right, where he might be bigger than anybody in New Japan, honestly, outside of Fale. But he's he's a beast, and to see him actually let loose and wrestle, that's the case with most of the guys on this list. If you haven't noticed already, it's a matter of letting them off their leash and letting them wrestle, because WWE's cool production wise. You got this big stage, and it's well known. It's a household name in wrestling, but it's not the be all end all, and it's unfair to see guys who wrestle and don't get to wrestle. Relegated to jokes or not even seeing much screen time or squash matches, and that's not wrestling to me, man. I'm sure a lot of other people feel the same. So that Sheamus would be on that list. Another guy who got let go, and I would have put him higher on the list, but I don't know if he's going to go to New Japan. It's personally, I mean, I don't know, maybe not, but it's one of my all-time favorites, and this is another guy who, at first, I saw his gimmick, and I'm just like, oh, God, but watching him wrestle whenever he was able to wrestle, amazing as hell, and considering what Matt Cardona, a.k.a. Zack Ryder. Now, back to what I was going to say a second ago, this guy, I wasn't a huge fan. The whole Guido thing, I hate that shit. I mean, I'm from New York. They're fucking annoying, but he made it work. And like I said, when he got into the ring and actually wrestled, it was stellar shit. I mean, I think the first time I actually caught a glimpse of him from what I saw at his best was it was a match, I think, for the Intercontinental or U.S. Championship. It wasn't for the belt. It was a sort of over the top battle royale for number one contendership, and I just watched him, and it wasn't greatest wrestling showcase, but he was able to tell a story. And then, you go back to this whole, them telling you at the time to reach for the brass ring. This is a company of a whole bunch of athletes, and everybody's trying to be on top. So, you got to reach for that imaginary brass ring. And he did that. He went out and he got himself over through his YouTube channel. And apparently, that was something they wanted you to do, but he got shunned for it. He got fucked over for going out of his way to put himself over. And Vince McMahon didn't like that. Vince was like, he's that type of dude. If I'm not putting you on top, if I didn't write you into the top of the story, if I don't fucking have a hard on for you, then you're not going to go to the top, no matter what you do, no matter how profitable it may be for the business. Like, and that's unfair, because that's also kind of what happened to Daniel Bryan until I don't know, hell froze over and he actually got a chance to be on top. But it's just amazing that you look at like the Bullet Club in New Japan, and those guys essentially were not Japanese at the start. The main Prince Devitt, aka Finn Balor, Carl Anderson, Luke Gallows. They were what they call gaijins, and that's not non-Japanese wrestlers, and they got themselves over. And throughout the years with AJ Styles, Adam Cole, Kenny Omega, the Young Bucks, and Marty Scurll, Hangman, Cody Rhodes being part of that Bullet Club, they got themselves over. Jay White, and they New Japan embraced that. Not everybody in there is going to win the IWGP Championship, but they still get their shine. They still get their spotlight, and New Japan embraces that. Other companies embrace that. Like, hey, that's less work for us to do. Yeah, you may not be in the main title shot, but you're going to be a significant part of this team, because you know what? You're making money for us, and that's what we want. We want people to watch our shows, come to our events, buy our merch. And Zack Ryder, aka Matt Cardona, did that, and he didn't, and obviously there's a lot we don't know, but at the same time, like, I mean, that story is well documented, and he was always, he rode for the company, whether he got a shine, whether he was on TV or not. He was always happy to be there. At least I think he was happy to be there, and to see him get let go sucked. But at the end of the day, like, yeah, people were losing their jobs as a wrestler in an uncertain time, but like, thinking positively and thinking that things would get better, he has a place in the wrestling world, and WWE is not the end of it. It's just that's leaving WWE is really the beginning of something much greater. I mean, look at Cody Rhodes. Cody Rhodes left, and look at this, going to New Japan, going to ROH. He won the ROH Heavyweight Championship. He won the NWA Championship at an event that him, Jericho, and the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega put together, the biggest indie show ever created. And he's Cody Rhodes. If you would have, like, 5, 6, 7 years ago, whenever it was that he was in WWE, if you would have said, oh, he's going to be one of the biggest names in wrestling, you probably would have laughed, because despite his father being Dusty Rhodes, his brother Goldust Dustin Rhodes, you would just, oh yeah, whatever. And look at what he did. And this is gonna come back later on, and you'll see what I'm talking about eventually. But yeah, so Matt Cardona, I hope he goes to New Japan, even if it's for a short stint. It could be a one-off thing. It could be G1 appearance. I just want to see him there, man. Just to see him wrestle and go at it with these guys. I think they will love him. I'm sure the Japanese fan base does watch wrestling outside of New Japan. And even still, they would still love him, even if they didn't know who he was. I mean, just his energy, his charisma. They are the type of people. They are the type of audience that they don't have to know you to connect with you. I mean, obviously it helps, but I love how their crowd reaction and the structure of the way they go about watching matches, how that goes. Because it's funny, like, they'll be quiet, And as a performer, you're like, shit, what am I doing wrong? But when they get loud, they get loud. It's just that they're not like the American crowd or the Western crowd where we have to be heard. Our voices have to be heard. It's about us. But no, they give credit where credit's due. Obviously, they know heel face, but when they're in the ring, they will give credit where credit's due. You could be the biggest scumbag in wrestling history, kayfabe, but they will respect you for putting on a performance in a ring, and I've seen it time and time again. So that's Matt Cardona. That would be great. Another one, and this is probably a long shot, but Walter of NXT UK fame. This guy is another big guy. And at first, when he came in, like, I know he was around in the indie scene, at least the UK wrestling scene. Though I didn't really know he was till he made his appearance on NXT. But he's a well-known name for the hardcore wrestling fan. And I just remember when I first saw him, I was like, oh God, another big guy. But I heard a lot of good stuff about him coming from the UK and having a rapport there. But yeah, again, like, I was just like, another big guy. Like, he may be entertaining, he may be fun on the mic or whatever, but he may hit hard, but can he actually get it in the ring? And then, lo and behold, he had a match with Pete Dunne for the UK title. Pete Dunne, small guy, but they call him the bruiserweight for a reason. But he had the longest reign as a champion in WWE at the current time. Like 300 and something days, maybe even longer, as the NXT UK heavyweight champion. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments below, if anybody's even watching. But yeah, so Walter was a guy that he was big, and I was like, oh God, another big guy. But he was dirty, man. Like, he can move, and he's another guy. Like, he knows how to tell stories. He's not just a what they call green big guy. Like, he's a wrestler, and that would work well in New Japan. You even the playing field. You have another more formidable opponent in the average person's eyes for Bad Luck Fale. But again, if you put him in the ring with Okada and Naito and Sonata and Evil and Ishii and Suzuki and Zack Sabre Jr. and Kota Ibushi, whoever else is there, it's gonna be an amazing match. I mean, and the way they chop in New Japan, I would love to see him and somebody go at it in a chopping battle. Like, that would be just sick. Now, my next pick is Cody Rhodes. Now, Cody Rhodes was in New Japan, but he never entered the New Japan, the G1 tournament. It would have probably happened, but then AEW came around, and for better or worse, he never made the tournament. He never entered the tournament. But then again, look at what Cody's done, and it's like one of those things. Yeah, it sucks, but I mean, it could happen. There is a supposed rocky relationship between AEW and New Japan and ROH because they all left after creating AEW, and that left the G1 ROH New Japan G1 Supercard show in Madison Square Garden, and left them not in a pickle, because we went to that show, me and the guys, and it was probably the best thing ever. Though we more than likely wouldn't have been able to go to the show if that move didn't happen, if Cody and Kenny and the Young Bucks were still there, because as great as New Japan was and ROH is, how great they are, and I would have went regardless, no matter if the whole Bullet Club was part of that. I would have went regardless. But the fact that they didn't go because they started up the company and they pulled out of the show, it created a sort of like, what the fuck, and could have damaged the show. Show was still great, but you take essentially the main draw of the show. Actually, Chris Jericho too was supposed to be there, if I'm not mistaken, or he would have appeared some way, shape, or form to beat up somebody. Obviously, you get that Madison Square Garden pop, but that didn't happen, and it sort of messed things up. But so Cody Rhodes didn't never entered the G1 tournament, but we got a little sniff of it because, years prior, he was in the Bullet Club, and there was the whole Bullet Club imploding thing. Him and Kenny Omega both going at it for the leader role, though both really not saying they were going after anything, because technically Kenny was the leader, so he felt he didn't have anything to worry about. But Cody also never really said he wanted to be the leader of the Bullet Club, but you obviously saw it was there. But Cody Rhodes, you put him in. You look at what he's doing right now with the TV TNT title on AEW. And, when he won that belt, he said, I'm going to defend this every Wednesday. Every Wednesday. And the coolest part about that was he wasn't subjecting challengers to the AEW roster. He willingly, he said he would take anybody on, which is cool because that opens up for, forget the guy, something Stark. He appeared. It was a big NWA dude. He appeared last Wednesday, and it obviously opens up for maybe people like Marty Scurll, Matt Cardona, people who are like Matt Cardona, who's definitely now an indie wrestler, but not tied to anything. Maybe he doesn't want to be tied to a company now. So there's a lot of possibilities with that. So you take that, but you multiply it by 100 in the G1 tournament, where he's wrestling every other night or whatever, every couple of nights a week, and wrestling the top guys. And maybe he doesn't win outright, maybe takes more L's than W's, but the kind of matches and the storytelling, and this guy, like almost every match in AEW that he's put on, especially like the main event pay-per-view matches, not all main event pay-per-view matches, but you know what I'm saying, any type of main event / pay-per-view match, he's put on a hell of a show. The match between him and his brother Dustin Rhodes, still in my eyes, is one of the best wrestling matches ever. And I don't mean that from a technical standpoint. You have like Kenny Omega and Okada who pull out all the stops and all these crazy big moves and whatnot. But from a old school storytelling standpoint, that match, this is a match that could have happened at WrestleMania. Could have been this great at WrestleMania, could have been a semi-main event or whatever, but Vince never saw it. And when they went at it, it was all the blood that Dustin poured out and the story they told. The two brothers who both felt like they felt different about, not necessarily the wrestling business, but they felt a bit different about their paths and each other's paths. And it was just brilliant, man. And if you've never seen it, go and watch it. And like that match was so good, it kind of puts like a tear to your eye. Not kind of, but it does if you're into the storytelling aspect of it, and you feel it. And that's something that WWE tries to do. They make it seem like their company is based on stories, but pretty much all the stories are told outside the ring, whether they're good or bad, whether they make sense or not. But then when they get in the ring, it's not the same. It is the same formula in the sense that, like, if it's heel versus face, heel beats up face for 5-10 minutes, puts him in rest holds, blah blah blah. Then face has a sudden reemergence at the end of the match and takes over and wins. That's usually their formula, but it was a whole different level of storytelling. And Cody Rhodes he's proven himself to be one of the best. He fits in the current generation of wrestling. He would fit in the 80s generation of wrestling. So that I would love to see him in the G1. Whether he won it or not, it would be, he could be a viable, believable IWGP champion. Especially with the whole Bullet Club, he kind of brought the heel element back to Bullet Club. But actually, to digress a bit, he got real heat. It was to the point where, like, people had to. He thought about getting security to go to wrestling matches to get, walked into the ring, and not on some Goldberg type shit, but just because he was getting real heat, and that's people really believed that he was an asshole, and that was great, and that's storytelling. So to see him do that, and in a foreign territory, it seems like a thing that's overdone, especially in WWE. But the way New Japan does it, it's the whole other level. So he would be great. Now my next pick is Bray Wyatt. Now this is probably never gonna happen unless there's some kind of crazy miracle. But Bray Wyatt, in my opinion, one of the best talents in wrestling ever. I mean, from a mic standpoint, he's just, I mean, he takes anything and runs with it. From the Wyatt family, Bray Wyatt, to the Fiend, to the Mr. Rogers, Bray Wyatt. I mean, he's taken these things and he's made people buy into the character. I mean, when he came back after the Bray Wyatt, the Wyatt family, Bray Wyatt, and you know, he morphed into that Mr. Rogers / Fiend, that Jekyll and Hyde type thing. Dude, he made people love it from the get. As weird and kooky as it was, he made people really buy into it and think that this is the next thing. Obviously, WWE runs it into the ground, but he's still making it work. And with the Firefly Funhouse quote unquote match with John Cena, which was very odd to see because it was pretty much taking shots at the entire WWE. Like just a WWE in its entirety from its inception to the Hulk Hogan days to now. You know, pretty much taking shots at how they view wrestling and how they view their wrestlers and whatnot, and it was just brilliant. And despite Vince and all their creative kind of running him into the ground, he still makes it work. And as a wrestler, he's not big, but he's stocky, but he can move. He has it all. And now let's say you take this Fiend character and you put him in Japan. They're a fan base that they buy into what's going on. You know, whether it's like suspending their disbelief or whatever, or they just really buy into it. You take the Fiend, that scary Joker demon gimmick, and bring it to New Japan, they will gobble that shit up. Like, they will love it. And, you know, we'll probably never see that. I mean, and even if Bray Wyatt, by the grace of God, left, we definitely wouldn't get the Fiend because of copyrights and all that. Maybe we get something similar. Who knows? But, I mean, just the amount of... you don't even have to understand what he's saying, and you just, like... you would buy into it. It's similar to like when I watch New Japan in Japanese commentary. I don't understand what they're saying. I mean, I would love to, but I don't understand what they're saying, but I feel it, and that's just universal emotion. And Bray Wyatt would be just amazing in New Japan. I mean, anywhere other than WWE. I mean, bring him back to NXT, that would be sick, but that's obviously not happening. But yeah, you take him, whatever gimmick, no gimmick, and just let him do his thing, and it's going to be amazing. I mean, and if, like I said, if you could take some kind of Fiend-ish gimmick, some kind of monster type thing, and bring it to New Japan, I mean, they look at Evil. They love him. But they also, it's one of those things where like you fear him, but you love him, you know, because you respect what he's about, what he could do. But yeah, you take the Fiend and you just let him run loose in Japan. I mean, kids are gonna be scared, but that's the point. That's what you want to do. You want to entertain people, for whatever, you know, for better or worse. You want to entertain people. If kids are scared, if you know, people are scared, that's great. You're doing your job. It's like a horror movie, you know. You want it to be scary, but that's definitely a long shot. But next up is Velveteen Dream, Patrick Clark. Now, since he's been blossoming in NXT, and he's a guy that at first, you know, not the best wrestler in the world, compared to guys like Gargano, Finn Balor, Champa, Sami Zayn, Samoa Joe, Shinsuke, guys like that. But over the years, he began to get better and better. And you know, the thing with wrestling is like what you lack in athleticism, as far as like, you know, doing crazy moves and whatnot, you can make up for in the showmanship and the storytelling aspect of it. And he's kind of like got that Cody Rhodes vibe. You know, they got the similar type of body height in a sense. I don't know what their difference is in height, but but they both tell stories. And you look at his NXT takeovers where he comes out dressing like Hollywood Hogan, or or the whole Rick Rude tights. I remember when he came out in the Hollywood Hogan stuff, and when he laid out, I forgot who it was. I think it was Champa. No, it wasn't Champa. I forgot who it was, but he laid out whoever it was with the big boot. I was like, no. And then he did the Hogan leg drop. I was like, and it was everything you want from a wrestling standpoint. Like, he didn't take himself too seriously. He was just out there having fun, and he keeps getting better. So you put him in New Japan. I mean, they're already a flamboyant company. You got guys like Juice Robinson, who I haven't brought up in this entire thing, but he's another guy that I'd love to see him scrap with some of these people, and I'm pretty sure he has bump heads with them because he was part of NXT developmental. So, and he's an American, so that's pretty cool, to see him go at it with some friends. But they're very flamboyant out there. From Takahashi, Hiromu Takahashi, Ticking Time Bomb, to Juice Robinson, all over the board. I mean, they're out there, and it's crazy. So to see him out there would be great. I mean, from a wrestling standpoint, from a showman standpoint, you also add a little bit of diversity. But he would have some amazing matches, man. Like, they don't make wrestling anywhere else really. I mean, like, you watch new AEW, and AEW is great. I mean, some matches are okay, at least during the shows, but it's a weekly show, so you can't expect super stuff all the time. But they still put out on great shows. I never really feel like, this is whack, I could have waited. This is always like one or two moments, if not more, that really like make the whole thing worth it. But yeah, like I guess one thing that they do benefit from is having a lot of the guys like Kenny and the Bucks wrestle in New Japan for as long as they did. You got a guy like Pac, who was a staple in Dragon's Gate. Was it Dragon's Gate or Noah? He was a staple in Japanese wrestling, regardless of wherever he wrestled at. And he brings that over whenever he does wrestle. So you have a little bit of everything. You have your Western wrestling, you have your Eastern wrestling, and it works. So yeah, Velveteen Dream is another guy. Now, this is definitely a long shot, but I will tell you one thing: if Vince McMahon were to die, or let the company go and let Triple H run his company, spoiler alert, next pick is Triple H. If Triple H were to get hold of this company, me and my friends are always talking about what he would do with wrestling. I mean, you look at NXT. NXT is his love letter to wrestling, to the sport of wrestling. To stuff anything that WWE's lacking, NXT tends to make up for it, and then some. Like, there's usually every NXT takeover is always usually amazing. And that's a testament to Triple H and his love for wrestling. You could say whatever you want about him and his politics, or from back in the day with the whole clique, but NXT kind of like made up for that, and you have to give him so much credit because him and William Regal and guys like that. So anyways, this seems like a long shot, but we personally feel like, me and my friends, if Triple H were to somehow get hold of this company or be a big head and Vince McMahon stepped away, we would see some kind of event or crossovers between other promotions. Like, we always talked about this kind of like professional wrestling Olympics, where like maybe, if not every year, because every year is kind of pushing it, once every 4 years, all the big promotions, or major promotions, and even indie promotions, they come together for an entire weekend or week or month or whatever it is, and similar to the Olympics, and wrestle each other. And you have a tournament where like somebody, you crown the best wrestler in professional wrestling ever, something like that. And it won't, losing in tournaments doesn't diminish a person's worth, or it doesn't make them look weak or strong, or puts them under or whatever, or buries them. The tournament, what's cool about a tournament is that you play like you could play with a lot of different things, and somebody losing isn't the biggest deal as opposed to like the way WWE treats everything. But yeah, so Triple H, we personally think he would do something like that. Maybe not that big. That's just us dreaming, but it could be it's a little more believable than like something that's super far, like it's more believable than far-fetched, but probably won't happen. But anyways, Triple H in the G1 tournament. I mean, he's another guy who's been wrestling for forever. He's wrestled almost everybody. Stone Cold, Bret Hart, Undertaker, Chris Jericho, Chris Benoit, Eddie Guerrero. He's wrestled everybody. And to see him in the G1, that'd be great. I always thought somebody like him and Naito going at it would just be so good. And just to have his, I mean, you have to know who he is. I mean, I don't care if you know wrestling, you know Triple H. And just having him in the New Japan tournament, seeing him go in, that'd be great. I mean, there's a whole bunch of people that I could like name. I narrowed it down to certain people, but it just having Triple H over there would be great. I mean, he's a little older, but I mean, still he can still. I mean, Tanahashi still gets it in. Kojima still gets it in. Blue Justice Nagata still gets it in. Minoru Suzuki still gets it in. I mean, Liger, Jushin Thunder Liger. He's not wrestling anymore. He finally retired, but he was wrestling up until the beginning of this year, and that guy's been wrestling for like 30 years or something like that. So I mean, it could be done. But that would be amazing. I would love to see Triple H go at it with, the Naitos and the Suzukis and even the Ishis. See him get hit hard. He'd love that shit. But that's something. And going back to what I was saying about if he ever got hold of the company, just imagine a professional wrestling Olympics. The best in the world. Like we could actually settle that score. Nobody could just say I'm the best in the world. They actually go out there and prove it. So you have your best cruiserweight, your best heavyweight, your best tag team, your best female wrestler, your best woman wrestler. It would just be it would be amazing. And you could have fun with it. You could take it serious, but you could also it'll be a great thing for wrestling. But who knows? Maybe that'll happen. Maybe not. Next on the list is another guy who recently got let go, and this is Rusev. I don't know his real name, but Rusev is another guy who he started out as one of those big foreign brutes, and he still was like, people still bought into it. He was a guy who was athletic. He could get it in. Once aside from the being barefoot shit, but he's a guy that people stood behind. And then after the whole big brute thing kind of like sort of diminished, he got himself over with the Rusev Day and everything, and he seemingly got punished for that. And this is a guy who could have been world champion, should have been world champion. I mean, Jinder Mahal was the world champion, and this guy wasn't. Along with guys like Cesaro. But to my knowledge, I mean, TNA Impact, they put up something about a month or so ago, or a couple weeks ago maybe. It was like a little vignette of a bunch of wrestlers that were appearing for them, whether there was actually signees or just short appearance or whatever. And every other wrestler, they showed their face. Rusev, they didn't show his face, but they showed the a flag. I think it was the Bulgarian flag or where he's from. I don't know. I don't remember if he's actually Bulgarian or that was just a kayfabe thing. But they had a flag there. So I mean, if he goes there, it's not impossible for him to make the G1 tournament. I know there was a relationship between the two, but I know it got rocky maybe. But yeah, so Rusev will be a guy. It's another relatively big guy. He's not as big as Eric Rowan or Fale, or Walter, but he's big. He's a big guy, and he's another wrestler. And they would love him. He would love it there. He would benefit from it. We'd get to see how much of a good wrestler he is. That'd be cool. And short and sweet. He he should be in the G1. That'd be cool. I mean, you just add a whole nother dynamic to the tournament of already diverse wrestlers, and it would be dope. Now, my next pick is Dustin Rhodes, Cody's brother. Now, I put him like high up on the list, even higher than his brother, but it's one of those things where Dustin Rhodes has been wrestling for a long time, and I think he's another 30-year wrestler. And the most baffling thing is all the time he was in WWF, WWE, out of all the time he was there, he never won the big one. Not even for one day. It could have been one of those one day he drops it the next day. Like he wins it on a pay-per-view, loses it at Raw. Not once. I don't think I'm almost 200% sure that's the case. I mean, unless something slipped me, but I've always been a fan of Goldust, as weird and flamboyant and kooky as he was, borderline gay. It was always funny to me because it was like people were afraid of him because of that, and he was just like, but he, despite the craziness of his character, he always showed he can wrestle, and even at this age, he's 50 something. I don't know his exact age, but he still got it. I mean, you see him on AEW, he wrestles pretty much on a weekly basis, and he's pulling out moves, the Canadian Destroyer, and wrestling in these 5-star matches, great story matches, and he would benefit. I mean, again, he's old, but the way New Japan works, even in the climate of the G1, where they wrestle several times a week, it could be anywhere from like 2 to 4 times a week. I mean, one-on-one tournament matches, not counting the preview tags, which they kind of get like a rest there. He would be one hell of a show, man. I mean, this is Dusty Rhodes' son in the G1. Again, he doesn't have to win it, but just putting people over and putting on a great show and just showing what he's made of. I don't know if that's gonna happen because of his age, and but who knows? I mean, it would be nice to see him pop up in New Japan somehow, even if it's like I said, a one-off event or whatever, one match thing. Maybe they do another G1 Supercard type deal or whatever in the future if they patch up all the whatever relationship issues they have, if they even have any. Now, my next one, it's a little cheat. This is putting 2 guys on here because in the last 5-6 years, whatever, however long it's been, they've been synonymous with each other, and this is Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa. Now, these guys are kind of small for a heavyweight. You think you would throw them into the Best of Super Juniors first, and that could be a thing, but they're both in a similar vein of Kenta. They're both heavyweight championship caliber performers. They obviously, we've seen what they've done year in and year out in NXT for the past couple of years, putting on 5-star match after 5-star match after 5-star match. I mean, there's no denying that they can't be champions in wherever they go. I wouldn't mind seeing them in the Super Junior tournament. I mean, because they're a little bit smaller. I mean, I think they're both smaller than Ospreay, and Ospreay is not even a big dude. I mean, he's gotten bigger, but that's something that would be. I would love to see one, or if not both of them, in the New Japan G1 tournament. I mean, I don't know. It could be possible. They're in NXT right now, and hopefully they're granted some wiggle room because Triple H is running the thing down the line. Especially if he does get hold of the entire WWE. You can see both those guys doing stuff other places, and I don't know about the G1, but it would be cool to see them both in it. My next one is Daniel Bryan. Now, I know he was in the indie circuit as Bryan Danielson for a long time. I don't know if he's ever wrestled in New Japan. I can't attest to that. But he's another guy. I mean, he's small, but he doesn't have to win it. You just want to see him in it. And you got guys like Kenta. He would be brilliant in it. He'd obviously definitely have a height advantage against most guys, but again, this guy he's like, you kind of look at it like a little smaller Chris Benoit, in the sense that Chris Benoit was never the biggest dude, but he was a monster in the ring, and they called him the Rabbit Wolverine for a reason. And Daniel Bryan is no slouch either. I mean, this guy, we've seen him put on amazing match whenever he's allowed to actually wrestle, and Lord knows what he could do in the G1, and that would be something. I mean, I could see, out of all the guys on this list that are tied to WWE contracts, I could see him making it happen, just because he seems to be a guy that would be open. I mean, I hope be open to be doing other stuff in other companies. I mean, again, with New Japan, granted, Japan is Japan, and that's a far schedule, but I know outside of flying back and forth, their schedules are way easier than WWE is. Because WWE, you have to travel multiple times a week. You're wrestling almost every day. It's not. And his neck issue is there, but I'm a firm believer that obviously with the hard hitting style, he would still be protected, and he would still go far over there. Now, this one is a huge reach, and this is like my super fantasy dream dream booking, or whatever you want to call it, and this would be Sting. Now, I know he's hurt. Oh, he was hurt. I don't know if he's able to wrestle. Here's the thing, though, with WWE, when people are hurt there, part of me, depending on who it is, part of me almost feels like, and it sounds fucked up, but it almost feels like their injuries are fabricated just so they have them locked down, in a sense where they can't go anywhere else, but they can't shine. And yeah, they signed him a couple years back, and I guess they had plans for him, kind of got ruined. Whether they were going to book him against Undertaker in the near future didn't happen, because Seth Rollins ended up injuring him, which was completely accidental. Shit like that happens. And they wasted the whole Triple H thing. I mean, it could have been better than it was. It was kind of a letdown. It's pretty much just like an NWO versus DX bullshit. And that just, like, that's prototypical of WWE. They're just like, oh yeah, we're gonna just, like, make everything a nostalgia trip, and just whatever we could cram into it. But back to the whole injury thing. I mean, he was a WCW guy. He was one of the only guys to tell Vince no. I mean, look at how long it took him from when Vince McMahon bought WCW, so when he actually made his first appearance in a WWE ring. It was a long time. It was close to 20 years or something like that. And he went to TNA. I mean, did what he did there, which is cool. But so yeah, back to the injury thing. I just feel like they kind of hold people down, and I don't know the truth of that. That's just me speculating. I mean, it goes back to, like, me having like issues with, like, Dolph Ziggler. Whenever Dolph Ziggler would get his quote unquote concussions, it was like one of those things where it seemed odd, because he did say something sort of bashing the company on Twitter. Then all of a sudden he gets whether it was kayfabe or not, he got a quote. Whether what he said was kayfabe or not, he ended up getting a concussion. It just happened several times, and kind of just like. And then with Daniel Bryan, his neck thing. I mean, I'm sure he did hurt his neck. I'm pretty sure it's not a lie. But on the other end, sometimes it's kind of like you didn't want him up there in the first place, and it kind of like his success was in spite of Vince McMahon, and though it made the company money, I don't understand why Vince has a problem with that. But that's just him. So yeah. Anyways, Sting in the G1 tournament. Now the thing with Sting is that I'm pretty sure he could still wrestle. I mean, if he's medically cleared. He's always been a solid wrestler. He has to be my favorite all time. I mean, going back to the colorful, flamboyant Sting, to the reimagined Crow version of the Sting in the later WCW days, and he always was one of my favorites. I mean, Sting was that dude, and like I got to see them once at Nitro. I mean, I was way in the back, but that was still to be able to be in the arena with Sting and Hogan. We're in the ring at the same time with them. I think it was Goldberg. Might have been Goldberg. If it wasn't Goldberg, it was DDP. But that was one hell of a time. So to see him in the G1 in an environment where it's hard hitting and it's intense, but it's also safe. I would love to see him in it. It would be just a sight for sore eyes. I mean, again, the crowd I think would love them. I'm pretty sure everybody knows who Sting is. And just his whole gimmick, the crows and all that, it'd be cool. Now this is probably the least likely to happen, even less likelier than Triple H. But it's my booking, and that would be a dream of mine to see Sting wrestle in the G1 tournament, and just give it to a lot of these younger dudes, man, and it would just be cool seeing that dude actually wrestle. Something we haven't seen since probably the TNA days. But one could dream. Now, my last pick. This is my number one guy. And this is another guy who, unfortunately, he's not going anywhere. And, I mean, I thought he was a couple of times. Sometimes it almost seemed like it was destiny, but then he just ends up appearing, fighting for a championship that he's either not going to win or... Now, I don't want to say he doesn't deserve, because he deserves any damn belt in the WWE. But it's almost like they throw him in that mix just to sway him from leaving. And this is my dude, Dolph Ziggler. Now, Dolph Ziggler is another guy. Him, Sheamus, CM Punk, Daniel Bryan, Damian Sandow, those guys like really got me back into wrestling again. Like I fell off somewhere after the Invasion era. That whole angle, like once that wrapped up, and it just, I don't know, I just got away from it. I didn't care too much for it for whatever reason. I mean, I still knew certain people, I was still in tune, but not fully there. And I missed out on some stuff, which sucks. But at the end of the day, I just felt like it was, and it wasn't even like, oh, the Attitude Era is done, or it just felt like it was getting stupid. And these guys brought me back into it. Like I started hanging out at the tattoo shop, and everybody there is a wrestler or into wrestling, and I started watching these guys, and I just like automatically fell in love with wrestling again, despite the stupid politics and all the dumb shit going on in the company, outside of occasional dope moments or whatever. But the main reason for me getting back into it was not only these wrestlers, but the guys at the shop. I was able to learn more about the art of wrestling, and I understood it more from an inside looking out standpoint, where almost like I was training to be a wrestler, though I wasn't. But I don't have the balls for that. But that's admittingly something I would always love to do. But yeah, Dolph Ziggler was that dude, man. He was that modern day Shawn Michaels, and honestly, I thought he was more. I mean, wrestling, he had it down packed. I mean, from putting on moves to selling. I mean, he's probably the best seller in wrestling today, and he deserves so much more than what he got in the WWE. And I don't know what it is. I mean, it's weird because he's got the look, he's got the attitude, he's got the mic skills, he's got the wrestling prowess, he's got the draw to be a face of the franchise. But I guess well, at that time John Cena was still running the company, so figuratively speaking, not literally, but so yeah, I guess there was no room for anybody else really outside of the occasional Randy Orton or Batista or whatever. But I'm surprised CM Punk got the championship for as long as he did. And how he did, but and that's another story for a whole other thing. Now he's another guy I would love to see in the G1 tournament, but that's like it's like possible, but also not possible. He's a weird guy in the sense that, like, I don't mean that in a bad way. I'm just like, nobody really knows what he wants to do. And that's fine, because that's his decision. It's his mind. It's his heart. It's what he wants. He knows what he wants. And, though we would all love to see him wrestle again in some way, shape, or form, or even just be a manager or something, we would all love that. And I think it would be the greatest thing ever. But, you got to respect his decisions and whatnot. Can't chew him up for not wanting to do what we want him to do. But it would be cool to see him in the G1. But he's one of those weird enigmas where, like, it's almost like, oh yeah, 100% he could do it, or 100% he's not going to do it. But anyways, back to Ziggler. Ziggler's not going anywhere. I mean, back to what I said before. Every time it seems like he's on his way out, the company just pulls him in, and I get it. He's financially secure. I know he has other endeavors like comedy and stuff like that I'm sure the WWE fuels is cool and everything. But it's one of those things where he's not going anywhere, and it sucks, because imagine him in the G1. I mean, plain and simple. There's not much more I can say. I mean, if you're a fan of Ziggler, you would know. I mean, this guy, he's probably one of the best performers. And if you look at what Cody Rhodes did leaving the company, imagine what Ziggler would do. I mean, nothing against Cody, but yeah. But I'm going to wrap this up. Duty calls. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Hopefully you guys want to hear more from me and the rest of the crew. Until next time, peace.
Are you tired of the same daily troll? Well, get on over to Blitz and Chance! We got one game. We got a whole bunch of games here. We got Chabos and Flobos, and you can shoot things. Get over here, play the game. Use your Flurbos to get tickets. Roy, too, just got here. Get over here at Chips and Chits.
It's the coolest place in the world. I get to be in the commercial.